Well, hi there, and welcome to another episode of Insights with NetSupport. I'm Al Kingsley, and after quite a diverse set of conversations today on all sorts of topics, I am really looking forward to chatting with Keren Mitchell, co-founder of Superkind. Keren, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely our pleasure. I think it's always nice to have the broadest possible set of conversations we can talk around in terms of skills and experiences we can introduce to our children and learners. And this is a topic that I'm sure will resonate with many as something that's a really worthwhile area to try and increase visibility, shall we say, within our schools. I do want to unpick a bit about Superkind, but I'm going to sort of talk in a broader sense first of all, without spilling too much of the secret. Obviously, much of what you do is built around that concept of social action and philanthropy. So I think I'm interested, particularly with a narrative about, certainly for many in education, we want to broaden the curriculum, broaden our experiences. Education sometimes can be perceived as being too focused and narrow on a certain set of core curriculum standards. So what's your perspective in terms of schools, and should they be integrating more social action and philanthropy into the curriculum, or do you see that sitting alongside in the classroom?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And in our view, and in the view of kind of all the research that's out there, social action is so important to children. We talk about a double benefit because, of course, when a child is supporting a cause or a charity, there's a benefit to their community or the cause that they're supporting. But really, our focus is on the benefits that it has to the children who are getting involved with social action. And we know from all the research that it's huge for children's sense of empathy and tolerance and open-mindedness and leadership. And I think really the key one is agency. And those are such important values for children to have. And, in our view, this should be front and center of the curriculum. There are areas where it fits in, and there's areas of Ofsted framework where it fits in. But it's so important and it's got so much benefit that we really want to see it more front and center. I mean, it's of course it's important to teach all the core stuff, but the children are spending lots of time learning about the internal angles of parallelograms or whatever it may be, when I think there's space for this kind of stuff to come in front and center.
Well, I mean, some of the conversations we've had recently on Insights have been around that perception of what we think of as a fully rounded child when they leave the education journey. And we recognize that the need for those core skills, literacy and numeracy and an understanding of context around information they have. But we're also seeing more and more pressure from employers for looking for that broader set of skills and experiences and that sense of the child as a whole, or that young person, that adult as the whole, as well as their commitment and buy-in to community, social. And I think every organization now is reflecting on its own social role it can play. So there's clearly some alignment. Do you think events of the last 3-4 years have heightened or increased the need for children to be more aware and have more pathways where they can engage in social action?
I think definitely. And I think that's reflected in kind of a range of different ways. And I think on one level, it's that so many causes have been brought very close to home. So although our site was originally kind of built around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we also have a section on kind of key issues facing the world at the moment. And it's having to be constantly updated. We've got cost of living crisis, and we have Ukraine, and we have Black Lives Matter. And there's so many, of course, we had COVID. There's so many big issues that are impossible to hide our children away from. Of course, we've got to talk to them in a way that is right for their age group. But children are seeing this stuff everywhere. And there's a sense of anxiety that can often come with some of these big issues. Not to mention climate change, of course, which is the big one, growing every year. And as, again, the research has shown, the antidote to anxiety is having a sense of agency and a sense that, I can have an impact on this. And I think, going back to COVID, we saw incredible things happening where children would create grassroots campaigns or food bank collections or whatever it may be. And that's continued up and down the country. And it's absolutely incredible to see the things that children can achieve. And I think often in our experience, when a child hears about one of these big, scary issues, of course, they want to help. And their first inclination is, how do I help? And so I think equipping them with the tools so that they can have that sense of agency and
Yeah.
genuinely make a difference is really important. And as you said, it's growing in importance every year.
No, I mean, that absolutely makes sense. And I always like the fact that many initiatives provide an opportunity for greater community engagement, which I think is so core to many of our schools. I'm just interested as well, given the breadth of topics, and we'll come on to the more structured parts of Superkind in due course. But in the bigger picture, do you think, in a way, looking at projects that involve social action and philanthropy, there's a way, or it gives an opportunity for teachers to bring challenging topics into the classroom? It provides that kind of entry point to have the conversation around it.
Definitely, because as I said, there's no hiding from a lot of these topics. Kids are going to hear them in the playground or at home, or see them on the news or the radio. And it's really important that we meet children with, the sort of respect and openness that they deserve, but not in a way that creates a sense of desperation, or, it should be all about empowerment. And that isn't entirely possible if children are engaged in a meaningful way.
No, absolutely. And I'm also interested, I've seen certain particular strands that have been picked up in recent projects, but do you think the UN SDGs are sufficiently visible in our schools?
Not really, in my experience. I understand, every school has got its limitations, and it's tough to always teach in a kind of cross-curricular way. But I think often they could be paid lip service to, but actually, it's really easy and very engaging if done in the right way with the right thought to bring them in a cross-curricular way. And I think they can provide a really cohesive way to teach themes to children.
I guess I probably should have started by saying, do you agree that there should be greater visibility of the SDGs within our education framework? I mean, that's probably just as important question.
I do. They're not perfect, but I think as an idea that people can recognize and get behind and, provide a core. We spent a lot of time trying to think about how to structure our educational content. And ultimately, we concluded that the SDGs were the best way to go.
Yeah, I think that's sound, and I guess evidence is always about that trajectory. We're seeing more and more projects linked around SDGs that give children an opportunity to engage in topics that perhaps otherwise might be considered, well, that's something you can pick up when you're a bit older, or will rely on your parents to cover, or I don't think it's lack of will. Sometimes it's just capacity and how things are seen to be aligned with the curriculum that often is the challenge. So if we set some of our schools a bit of a task right now about implementing some kind of social action project work within the class, what would be your top tips other than the check out Superkind?
Well, it's all about agency. When we were building Superkind, we worked with some academics, and particularly a lady called Dr. Alison Boddy at the University of Kent, who's probably the UK's kind of leader in terms of thinking about philanthropy in children. And her research showed that if children engage meaningfully in social action when they're younger than 10, they're twice as likely to be habitually charitable and philanthropic when they're grown up. So we know that it's really important to engage children at this age. And the key thing is around making it meaningful and what that means. And her research said that it's about children knowing where their money's going, understanding the cause. Sorry, I say money, but it could be, their time or, their efforts are going, understanding the cause, and then having agency, choosing it. And what we've seen is that it's all very well children going into school and putting £1 in the bucket for a particular cause that maybe there'll be a short assembly on, and the children not really engaging and it's been chosen for them. It's completely different if a child is able to choose the cause they most care about and then choose a response that matches their interests and passions. And so what we've seen is that, of course, some children, love the idea of fundraising for animals and it really lights their fire. But other children, I mean, my son I'm sure he's going to be an inventor when he grows up. He loves that kind of sciencey side of things. And we've got children on our site a 12-year-old girl who invented a solution to dirty water. Water was her area of passion, and she was really good at science. There's so many different ways that social action can take place, and doing it in a way that matches up to children's passions really works well.
Yeah.
And I think it seems really hard to do that in the context of the classroom, but I think if you have the right structures in place, it's not, and that's what can make all the difference.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you've also touched on the fact that obviously, this is not the realm purely of our older learners within the education journey, that younger learners can engage in particular subjects and topics that can be made accessible to them. How do you see the role of parental engagement in projects and providing an opportunity for parents to share their own ideas and experience? Because sometimes the driver for this is about aligning activities with one's own lived experiences, whether it's to identify how fortunate they are or actually to identify that it's something that's really important to their own community.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And that last point being key, that social action can be, taken in the form of helping others because you are very fortunate, but also it can be in the form of, claiming agency for your own lived experience. And we've been in schools where we've talked about, writing a letter to local politicians as a form of social action. And the teachers tell us, our children don't even feel that they have the right to make contact with someone like a local politician. And so it goes really far upstream. It's about teaching children in the first instance that they can have agency, and inspiring them with stories of children who look like them and come from backgrounds like them, to show that anyone can make a difference, and you can make a difference. It's about making a difference to your own situation and your own lived experience as much as it might be helping others. To go back to your question about parental involvement, I think it's a virtuous circle, really, in that parents can encourage this kind of thinking and behavior amongst children at home, but also children can come home and bring these ideas to parents as well. And when we initially built our site, although we're mainly a schools platform now, we've designed everything so that children can dip into it on their own at home as well during the summer holidays. The key thing for us was that a child should be able to do this stuff on their own and not have the agency taken away from them. And of course, I've got young children. I'm not going to let them loose on the internet researching every type of terrible cause and charity. So it's really important to have that content in a walled garden, in a way that is safe and appropriate. And of course, it's a topic that parents can spend time with children on and talk about at dinner table or whatever it might be. But we don't want children to be completely reliant on parents to be able to learn about things and to take action themselves. I guess the one area that parents can help as well is sometimes putting pressure on schools to, the PTA to, do more, or to, if a school's not doing a, harvest collection or whatever it might be, sometimes all it takes is a parent to ask the question for a school to implement it.
Absolutely. And activities, projects coming together on good causes can often be a really important and cohesive glue within a school across the cohorts as well, a common target or action. I'm really conscious. The parents part for me was really important because we saw significantly, particularly during the last few years, that learners who had close parental engagement, particularly in the early years through Key Stage 1 and 2, that parental engagement can have a significant positive impact on a child's learning journey. But sometimes we also forget that often our children can be the best educators of our parents on some topics. It's quite a two-way street depending on the narrative and discussions.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. One thing I suppose that we've tried to mitigate against is What we found in schools is that often, because there's not many resources out there to teach social action to younger children in particular, we found that the extent to which a school engaged in social action was largely dependent on whether there was a particular teacher who was really passionate about it and would effectively give up their own time to, scout the internet and pull these resources together and do a lesson plan, etc. And so some schools would, deliver it really well, and other schools might not have a teacher who had that area of passion. And then we see the same thing with children. Sometimes it's something that their parents are really interested in and have been teaching them about for a long time. And sometimes that's not the case. And we really wanted to create a resource that would just make it easy for all schools and all families and all children to be able to implement this, to take away that need to do lots of digging or scouring around the internet or putting the kind of tools together. And hopefully it can be something that any child or any teacher who wants to engage in this will find it much easier to learn about these issues and learn how they can have an impact.
Absolutely. And you've given us a fairly good flavor as we've been talking about some of these opportunities that we can use to broaden experiences for our children. As a school leader or a trust leader, or frankly, just a classroom teacher, and I shouldn't use the word just, but it doesn't have to be on a grand scale. Sometimes social action can be very, very much a small cohort of students wanting to be supported with a particular area of passion. Often the biggest barrier is time. It's capacity for the leaders to research, make sure anything they empower or share with their students is safe, is appropriate, and in some cases, depending on the topic, is accurate factually as well. And there's perhaps sometimes a fear that without the right time to do the correct research, that puts a barrier to it. In that sense, Superkind is your social action projects in a box, ready to go.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Everything you said.
Summarized you a bit harshly there, Keren.
No. You're spot on. We been described as a sort of one-stop shop for social action, and everything that you just described in terms of the barriers to implementing it are what we've tried to overcome. Make the content engaging, make it safe, provide a framework to easily bring it into the classroom, to tie it into the curriculum. Take away as many difficult touch points for teachers as possible. And often it's going on already in school. Of course, a lot of this stuff is being taught and schools are doing stuff, but having a framework around it, common language, and streamlining it can really make a difference to the sense of engagement that children have. And so, perhaps it's as simple as, rather than just everything being off as a kind of scattergun, Superkind has tools for teachers to log everything on the system and award children badges when they carried out social action. And then they've got a database of what social actions have happened over the year and which kid has done what. And, sometimes it's just bringing that all together in a cohesive way that can really make it a lot more meaningful to everyone involved, including the teachers.
Absolutely. And thinking of school leaders across the country, one of the areas that we're really, really conscious of is that equity and inclusivity within our schools. So thinking about projects with very different school communities and cohorts across the country, how have you engineered that breadth in there to make sure, for want of a better term, there's something for everybody there in terms of the choices?
Yeah, it's such an important question. So we have 12 different types of social action on our website. Only 2 of them require any sort of financial backing whatsoever. So, one of them being fundraising and one of them being donating your old toys to charity shop or something like that. All the other 10, from volunteering to writing a letter to raising awareness, whatever it might be, require, nothing in terms of finances, because that is absolutely key. And it's really important that social action isn't seen as something for people in a position of privilege, or whatever it might be, wealthy schools who can afford to fundraise, or so it's a big focus of ours. I already talked as well about making sure that children see examples of people from their own backgrounds.
Absolutely.
And that can be national or economic or racial or gender, or even, as I was talking before, in terms of the things that they're interested in. It's really important to show a wide range of other children who have had an impact, because every child brings something to the table, and it's incredible what can be achieved. And I think it's really important when we're talking about the whole child and active citizenship and also character development, that this is a really big string to the bow of children. And that could be someone from a privileged background who is engaging in a lot of social action and is going on to secondary school and can show in their interviews that they're, very well rounded and they've engaged in lots of kind of external stuff. Or it can be children learning, who maybe aren't doing too well in the classroom, but learning, oh my, I'm amazing at organizing a 5-a-side football game, and raising awareness for a particular issue, or, whatever it might be. It's a really great way for children to bring a sort of non-academic strings to their bow.
Absolutely. Oh, well, I'm sure everybody listening is going to find it very difficult to disagree that there isn't some significant value and benefit to our classrooms to bring in the opportunity for more positive social action and give our children an opportunity to reach out and engage in topics that extend beyond their immediate vicinity, which is also important in terms of building horizons and visibility and understanding of other more challenging topics. For teachers, school leaders listening in, or parents for that matter, who have a particular interest, how can they find out more and join the Superkind solution?
So the website is superkind.org, and there's a wide range of ways that schools can get involved. The main way that we encourage schools to get involved is that we run something called the Social Impact Schools Award. And the aim of that is to recognize schools who are already doing a great job at bringing social action into their classrooms, but also to kind of encourage and incentivize schools who maybe have wanted to do more but haven't sort of found the time, by providing that kind of external recognition of it, which we know is important to parents and inspectors and staff and even the children. So we give lots of resources to schools and support them on a month-by-month basis to help them implement social action across the year. And then hopefully at the end of the year, they've got this award to show that they are a school that cares about social action and making a social impact. So that's a great entryway. But we have loads of free resources, be it pages all about the UN SDGs or current issues of the day, like we talked about, all of these case studies of young children who have made amazing differences. And then we've got our toolkits on these different types of social actions to empower children, kind of hold their hand on how to, for example, how do you write a letter? Where do you find your local MP's contact details? What format does a letter take? We've got lots of lesson plans tied into different areas of the curriculum. And then we also have, for those schools that do engage in fundraising, we built the world's only fundraising platform for children under 13. So schools can't use Just Giving or GoFundMe, etc., because the children have to be 13 or over, because they handle the GDPR and the data privacy in a completely different way. So often schools are using pen and paper, and children are bringing in money in their bags that teachers got to count, and half the donations don't turn up, and there's no gift aid applied and all that sort of stuff. So we've built a platform that can legally be used by schools, and it's fun for children, and they can earn badges and all that kind of stuff. And it's the only one that exists in the world at the moment for children under 13. So schools who do want to fundraise, that's a great, it's free for schools to use. And it's just a way to make sure that children are keeping the agency, and they don't have to go home to mum and dad and say, oh, can you make me a fundraising page on this site? So
we probably should have led with that at the start of our conversation, because for me that's something really important. We're always looking at ways to simplify the process whilst empowering the students for that agency. So I think the more we can do that and remove the logistical barriers, the better all around. But I know schools rightly and increasingly so now are very aware and sensitive to data protection, data privacy, particularly for our younger learners. And so anything that removes some of those fears and concerns has got to be a win.
Yeah. It's a funny one for us because we're really proud of it, and it's taken 2 years to build it. And it's working really well for schools. But at the same time, as we've talked about, we don't want to come on and only talk about fundraising, because social action is so broad, and fundraising, you know, the very concept of fundraising in this day and age, I know, will turn off a lot of head teachers, and they'll say, you know, we can't afford, you know, our children can't afford to fundraise, or our parents, or our school. But schools can use the platform for themselves as well. They can easily be added as a good cause or charity. So any events that they do to raise money for the school or for the PTA, they can use Superkind as well.
Perfect. Well, like all good platforms, it's about giving schools choice. And sometimes the small things grow over the years into bigger projects and bigger opportunities as well, don't they? So
yeah,
that's really
absolutely
good. Keren, listen, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your insights on Superkind and just the broader value and benefit to thinking of others a bit more within our school system. So
thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really good to talk about it.
My pleasure. And anyone listening, please do check out superkind.org, and all the links and details from this conversation will be shared at the bottom of the respective platform as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.